aka PRJR Sounds. He runs and owns this studio, and I've been working on it for several years, and I've worked with him for several projects. And we definitely want to give, some appreciation to him coming out, taking his time. Like I said, he's been working with me since day one with all the stuff that I've done, whether it's been making production, whether it's engineering, mixing and mastering, whether it's ghostwriting, whether it's promotion, advertisement for artists. This guy's credibility extends way further than mine has. So we got Kay over there. She's all the way in Tennessee to watch you. Okay. Like I said, I'm gonna let him run the floor. He's gonna, like I said, he's gonna explain to you about VSTs, plugins, compression, EQing, and the vocal chains. We're gonna talk about Pro Tools and how to use it the best way you can.
So I appreciate y'all even, sticking around. I can get here to speak to y'all, so thank you. I appreciate this. But yeah, I don't know. I guess the best way we can do this is kind of just, y'all kind of throw out some questions y'all might have, and I kind of answer the best I know, and we'll just kind of go like that. I'll start with you.
How do you feel about being a ghostwriter?
I like it. And I'll say this: in the hip hop world, it's a little frowned upon, but like in other genres like R&B, country, pop, you tend to see it a lot more. On a higher level, as far as dealing with industry artists, you tend to see it a lot more as far as like ghostwriting for artists and things like that. I mean, I'm a big collaborator. Like, somebody has something better than I do, right? Like, I might be good at engineering, but somebody might be really good at writing. Somebody might be really good at production. And I think when you bring that together, you get the best, right? Like, it's just as simple as like, it takes two to tango, right? So if you have more than that, it's typically better.
What about R&B?
Okay.
What's a vocal chain look like to you?
I'm very simple, so I'm really big on less is more, right? And because like a lot of, I would say more so nowadays in the sound and the way the industry sound is, we tend to do a little bit overdo, but that's just how we've come because of the digital world has allowed us to kind of be unlimited. But a vocal chain for me is as simple as compression and a little bit of EQ. That's it.
What kind of EQ?
I usually use a 3-band. Yeah, when I'm doing
recording. Well, I want for him on the Pro Tools, so they kind of see it visually. Now, remember, these questions that you've been asking about mixing and mastering, I'm asking about what plugins, and we're talking about all the plugins. And if you got any, like, real situations, like, we're talking about how, like, the format that he does his stuff, all that stuff. He's an open book, and he's also, and also ask him about hertz, because he knows a lot about hertz and frequencies. He knows why those belong, where they belong. Certain instruments, vocals. So like if you say, where should I put my 808 on an EQ band? How should I compress my EQ band? What's the best compressor? Stuff like that. Those questions that you have for your vocals, singing, orange, auto tunes, all that shit. He's here.
When doing R&B, what's the best compression and what's the best?
What's to make you sound like a girl? Is that what you said?
What's the best compression and the best hertz to use?
Okay, so when doing R&B, there's not necessarily a best compressor. Like, it's all about the tone of the voice. So, you might have somebody who sings extremely high pitch. You might need to warm them up a little bit, right? So you might want to use a tube compressor. So to break it down, a tube compressor uses a tube as its main transformer to power it. So and typically tubes, what people used to love tubes so much is because it gives you a saturation and a warmth sound.
Saturation.
It'll take a, if your voice is kind of like, let's just say thin, it'll kind of warm it up, give it a little bit bigger sound or fuller sound, and that's why typically tube was so popular. I mean, people still love it today on vocals, but I would say on a singer, typically tube sounds better. Naturally sounds better.
What about the hertz?
That's the one way he showed was like when he was at the studio, he had it right up under the
yeah, he had a tube compressor. I think there was that it was a 76 joint.
Over
no, black one. Like it was like a 2A. It was like a 2A.
Oh yeah,
it was a 76.
Yeah. And
they went to your studio you created.
Okay, yeah.
They kept calling him my guy, like I didn't know.
Oh yeah, the 76.
Yeah,
that one has a tube in it. Sometimes they get creative. Because I don't think naturally the 76 has a tube in it, but some companies have kind of like created their own little way of doing it and put a tube in it.
Explain the difference in tube classes too, because they don't understand it as well.
What is it?
The difference in tube classes, like class A, class B, stuff, because they don't know.
Yeah. So typically, like, you have a class A tube, a class B tube. Typically in microphones, you'll see like a class A. It typically has more of a richer sound. Your class B, class D tubes, they tend to be a little bit more duller sounding. Typically they seem to cost a little less, but you might see them more in like a preamp versus like a microphone.
And that's that big box you see connected to the microphone if you're on the bottom. That's what powers the mic. Remember we talked about 48 power? Mm-hmm. That is the power that goes to those mics. And those have actual tubes in it that may need to be replaced if they burn out.
Yeah, over time tubes will go out. That's one thing you gotta keep in mind. they're amazing, but then when they go out, you'll start to feel like there's less power, or the microphone doesn't have as much output gain as it needs. I wish I would have brought one, but typically on a tube, it has like silver like solder inside of it. And when it gets to you'll start to notice when it's going back. It's
Like a light bulb.
You'll see it'll be silver. You'll see it's full of this silver like solder inside. It'll be low, and this one you'll know it's like time to replace it. There's other types of transformers. Like I said, you can use a tube. That's what puts the output gain to any type of device. Like I said, preamp, compressor, even EQs. They also have like FET transformers, right? Which is more of like what you've ever heard the word solid state.
What is
Solid
it?
state.
If you gotta pull it up on the computer, you can go on Google.
So
So SSL,
He does this to me all the time too, y'all. He be showing me the photos. It's real.
SSL is a good name to run. They run on solid state. So solid state is more of a FET transformer, not a tube as a main transformer. So you'll find that when you're using FET transformers, they typically have more gain naturally. They're just natural. Like if you crank the knob just a little bit, you'll notice you don't have to turn it as much. And they're typically a little bit more brighter sounding, less warm sounding. And some people like that. So it's more so, like I said, it goes back to what you were asking. It's not about what's better. It's more so understanding the tone and who you're working with.
And who you're working with.
And that's how you'll know what might sound better for that artist. It'll be in any kind of electronic device. So sometimes, like, it's all about, like, think of engineering like cooking, right? You can make however you want. It's multiple ways to make mac and cheese, right? And you can put breadcrumbs on it if you want. You can not put breadcrumbs on it. You can put a loaded cheese. Well, typically, right, as our culture, we like a little brown on the top, right?
Right.
So with saying that, there's different pieces that you will work with over the years that you'll know, like, okay, this will give me this sound if I tie to it, right? There's also different, like, it's almost like people too. Like every device has different characteristics, right? Like you got a totally different characteristics about you. Like you probably know how to dunk the ball, you know how to shoot the ball, right? But when we bring it all together, we're the dream team, right? So
part of the chain.
So that's part of your chain. That's understanding the different devices. And why I'm bringing that up is because you have American type of electronics, you have British electronics, you have Sweden electronics, and they all give a different tone. So you'll notice typically like German electronics and Sweden electronics, or even
like cars, by the way.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it too. Cars, like you guys have been in a BMW before, right? They're typically a little more smoother, right? So that's a German car. Typically, German electronics naturally they're always a little bit smoother. So if you know you need something a little bit more smoother, a little less gain, you're probably gonna go to something like a German or British type EQ, right? Or
they classify those too, like especially the ones that they make like versions of. They can't because they're not made by that company. They'll call it the British or the white channel or stuff like that, and they're supposed to be similar to the ones that they're acting like. It might be considered even like the greater value, but they're as good as if. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And like I said, like I said earlier, there's a bunch of different companies like that try to manipulate what people used to like rave about. Like back in the day, there was just certain companies that just always gave you the best sound. Right? Nowadays, there's so many people that's recreating them, making it more affordable for people, just so you can get those different types of tones. There's no thing that's like in sound. Sound is subjective. You might think it sounds better. I might think it sounds better.
Write that down. Sound is objective. That's real because you think you like it, someone else might not. That's why he said the collaborative helps. Because if I get someone that likes it a little bit different than I do, well, how do I enhance that? And then that's when y'all build.
Yeah. It doesn't make someone worse or better. Like I can get somebody who is average at recording and I put them in $1 million studio, and I'll get somebody who's really good at recording and I put them in $1 million studio. You might make it better because you might hear things a little bit differently than the person that's been doing it for years, right? Like it's all subjective. So it just comes down to what sounds good. It doesn't matter. It's not about how many I'll teach you guys hertz, but it's not about hertz or none of that. It's good to know that. And as you continue to engineer, it will start to make more sense to you. But the main purpose to recording and engineering and doing it in general is make it sound good. I don't care what you do to do it. Just make it sound good. I can sit with him and he has his own chain. Just make it sound good, right? Like I work with some big mastering engineers. They don't even, a lot of people talk about, mastering. A lot of people use out of the box, use outboard gear to do a lot of mastering. I mean, nowadays you're seeing it more and more that people are staying in the box. They're doing all digital plugins, and you're just like, wow.
Y'all get what I'm saying, right? Like those stuff that's behind you, like the things, those gears that you see in those racks,
Like-
that's outboard gear. Whereas VSTs are the stuff that's inside the computer.
Yeah.
We have one of these. Just, I just mentioned those as an outboard.
Okay, yeah, this is perfect. So this is an outboard EQ, right? Does anyone know what kind of EQ this is?
32 channels.
It is 32 channels.
It's a certain type of EQ.
It's a certain kind of EQ, and this helps. So, all right. So to give you guys an example, what does this kind of look like to y'all when you look at it?
A radio.
Okay,
Yeah.
mixer.
Like a mixer.
Does it look like a graph at all?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
This is called a graphic EQ, and you know just based off of the way it's styled, it pretty much gives you the frequency range from left to right. And what I mean by left to right is you got 60 hertz all the way up to 40 kilohertz, right? So when I say kilohertz, I'm on the high end, that's treble, right? If I say hertz, 60 hertz, I'm down at the bass.
Tweeters,
right?
remember? Tweeters, woofers, and subwoofers.
Right. So if I'm at the 500, 400 hertz, that's mid-range. Typically vocals, pianos,
Well, I told you where the vocals like.
right? So, but this is a graphic EQ. It lets you kind of get in each range across the spectrum. That's why so many things.
It's precise. Instead of having like a 7 EQ, he's got 32 channel EQ.
Whereas if you have a 3-band, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying that I feel like that probably would be a little bit more effective to me because it's hands-on, you can control it.
You're talking about as an outboard gear.
As an outboard.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like if you heard a vocal and you're just like, man, this is one frequency I just want to dip out. This will probably let you get right in that low frequency because it gets you get in more spectrums. You're right.
Is that a more older model?
You can say it is, yeah. I mean, it's just DBX was known to make this graphic.
They also use it for live sound.
They
That's
use it for
what
live
it's
sound.
usually used for.
Yeah, back to I think someone asked me earlier what vocal chain I might use. Sometimes I'll use like a digital version of this for vocals, like because it allows me to kind of just like roll off some of those low end tones or hit right in the where it's a little muddy, and right in the highs.
Which one would that be?
Don't DBX have one?
DBX does have one, but they call them parametric EQs,
Yeah.
which is the REQ.
Yeah.
So the REQ is basically a lot like this. The only difference why they call it parametric
I'm
is
just playing with
because
you. I put you in a position, Fred. He knows all these things.
the biggest reason why they call it parametric is because you get to kind of like add to it. You can kind of add 7, add 8, add 9, add 10. You know, so it lets you be a little more versatile. Whereas this is just laid out. This is what you got. You get. So yeah, these are very helpful. I tend to use a graphic though, like a lot of times a graphic on an overall mix. Right after I get the mix how I want it, this allows me to kind of say, okay, I need to take a little bit of bass out of there. I need to put a little bit more highs. Maybe the vocals need to pop a little bit more. Let me hit the mid range. That's it. Right? That's all I'm looking for. So nowadays, people are getting away from using outboard gear. I mean, they just are. There's still some that use it. I do when I need. I just use it more subtly. Like back in the day, you had to have it. It's not anymore. And so a lot of people are mastering songs all within Pro Tools, and that's it. I mean,
You got to remember something too that he would also add on is the fact that VSTs at one point in time weren't as effective as they were as an analog surface. Because we were talking about, remember when we talked about Pro Tools when it first came out, it was only 2 channels. And it was $6,000. So they were like, you know what, I'm just going to take this Tascam recorder and hook up a few other things. And at one point in time, analog gear was easier to come by. But now it's more, that's more of a flavor. It's more of a taste. It's like, some people, we talk about this when we do chicken wings. We like that charcoal taste, but sometimes we prefer to use the propane to either for quickness or just for the fact that there is a taste from that propane that we might enjoy.
Yeah.
Maybe better on fish and better on certain other things. Maybe better on asparagus. Whereas, when we got that chicken, that charcoal shows. So that's just to give you an example of why we use certain things in particular, like outboard gear and inboard gear. But
that's really it. It's a tool. Just understand that it's just a tool. Like, if you're working on a house, you guys might have worked and renovated on a house before. Like, you're trying to fix one little thing, right? It might take you 2 hours to fix it, but if you had that one tool, it might take you 15 minutes, right? That's what it's for. Don't look at it like, oh, I gotta have this. This is gonna make my sound the best thing. It's not necessarily gonna make it the best thing. It's just being creative, using your ears. Don't overthink. Just do what sounds good. If it sounds good, that's all that matters. Because there are technical things that you can learn, and you'll learn as you do it. That'll help you smoothing out your sound. You'll learn that, like, okay, that's noisy. Because the biggest thing in recording is noise. You want the lowest noise. The lowest noise possible is what gives you the cleanest sound. A lot of people don't understand that, but that's the trick. That's why, acoustics in a room are very important. Padding in the room is very important because it helps you lower the noise so that you can hear more accurately what's going on. Right? I could take a $200 mic, but if the room is treated well, it's gonna sound better than a $4,000 mic in an untreated area.
And we can be by treating having the padded walls and all that.
Having the padded walls.
Can you explain a little about bass traps and how important those are?
Yeah, bass traps are important.
So
They're called the proper term, bass trap.
Yeah, it just helps with.
No, the pads are different. We're talking about the things that go in the corners of the rooms.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Bass traps are good. They help with this bass tones. Sometimes when you go to set up a room or treat a room, you might have some weird anomalies in the room, and you need certain bass traps to kind of help get rid of it so that you can hear some better frequencies and things like that. It helps if you're doing drums a lot in certain rooms because sometimes drums can kind of linger when you're playing them in a room. They'll start to rattle off on other things. Bass traps help.
So you can use a blanket.
You could. A blanket. The old school way is crates. When you go to McDonald's, they give you the crates which you put your drinks in. Those actually they're very ugly, but one of the most effective pieces that you could use to deaden sound. You probably all seen Hustle and
I
Flow.
was just thinking about it.
Yeah, they had them all in the room. Blankets were carpet is the key, like a rug. As funny as it sounds, mattress, couches, just things like that help a lot. Another thing that helps stop dead sound is stone, concrete, marble, rocks. That'll help stop sound because it's mass. Think about it, like the mass of rocks. The mass is what's stopping the sound. So that's very key to have. That's why it's weird as it sounds. Basements are actually kind of good to have studios because they're typically concrete foundations.
Listen, guys, this is very important. He's going to be explaining a little bit more in depth of what I've explained on vocal chains.
So, like I told you, I'm big on less is more. Some people love having a whole bunch of effects when they record, if that's your way of doing it.
When you record, not after you record. Remember, he's talking about his recording process.
Yeah. The biggest thing I can tell you in recording that most people make the biggest mistake, in my opinion, is a lot of people do hip hop, right? They do a lot of 2-track recording, meaning it's just a stereo track in Pro Tools and they record. They don't turn the beat down. That's so important because a lot of these beats we get off YouTube or from these producers, they're already mastered. They don't tell you that, but if you look at the waveforms, they're already mastered. So you gotta turn them down because you won't be able to understand and monitor what's going on. Because when you're recording, you're monitoring what you're recording. So if you're doing vocals, you're monitoring the vocals. You're not monitoring the beat. But a lot of people want it to be so loud in their headphones and banging, and that's okay. But there's ways to do that.
There is ways. Trent, why do we do that?
The amps.
Hold on.
Ask that question again.
Why do we turn that beat down? Remember what I was telling you? Because we need
monitor
the
sound of the headroom.
That's right. Yeah. And you want to be able to hear the vocals fully. So it goes back to the spectrum. So before I get to this chain, when I say spectrum, all right, this is a spectrum. Notice it's 30 hertz to 16 kilohertz, okay? So look at the spectrum as a circle. And they call it the stereo field, right? Because you're within the field. That's your spectrum. From left to right, right to left. So in this spectrum, that's how you know where things go and things are placed. Look at it like it's a stage, right? Like if you're at a concert, they typically put the drummer right in the middle of the back, right? The guitar player over here to the left or right, the bass player, and they'll have the artist in the middle. It's the same kind of concept with an EQ. Each sound is gonna sit in different places. And you're gonna filter out or boost or cut in different places of the stereo field. So in my vocal chain, this is a good compressor that a lot of people use. The art compressor. A lot of people will, if I'm doing a lot of hip hop, rap, R&B, I'm going to need a compressor, and I'm probably going to do a lot more compression than I would if it was like singing or like country music, because with rap it's very constant. They're just instantly back, hitting, right? Because they're just back to words.
We're talking about when you're looking at it as an attack. Remember we're talking about when that release attack.
We'll do this. So the best way for me to explain compression, so you understand why it's important. Compression is, you ever been in the car with your mom and you play your favorite song and she like, turn that shit down.
Yes.
Right? And then you like, all right, you turn it down. And then you're riding for a little bit and you turn it back up. And then she's like, turn it back down. And then you kind of like, turn it right back up. Right? It's finding that middle ground. That's the best way I can tell you about compression. Now, there's different elements in compression, right? You got the attack and release, right? That's how quick it attacks or how slow it attacks. Like, so when somebody speaks into the compressor, you can set how much you want it to actually hit before it actually works. That makes sense? So if I do a kick drum, right? If I got too much attack, it might sound too saturated. If I got a little less attack, or let's say a lot of attack but a slower release, it might hit, but it might take a while before it kicks back again. That makes sense? Because you're setting how the speed of how quick it attacks the vocal. Then you have a ratio. The ratio, for me, the best way I've always explained ratio is kind of like, you ever bought a sandwich, it was perfectly fluff, but then you actually left it in your book bag too long and it was kind of smushed. That's kind of like the ratios, and there's different ratios. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So, but sometimes you have to set those ratios so that it blends with the instruments. Because sometimes instruments, when you have hi-hats, drums, snares, all that going, is very dynamic, right? But your vocals might not be, or they might be too dynamic, like too bold. You ever started recording a song and when you first started recording, the vocals sound real full and just like dull, and the beat might sound more thin or laid out or smooth. Well, you kind of have to change your ratios to kind of blend that so that they come together better. Like that's what the compression helps for. It helps blend the dynamics. It helps take them from being so bold and so full sounding and kind of like thin them out so that they blend better with the rest of the track.
And depending on the compression you use, it also can give it a limit to where they're all the same. Not one is peaking, the other ones, it gives it a good. I tell you, every time I bring it up, I bring up that TV thing with the old person when he's like, we'll be back after these messages. Have you ever been hit? Like, if they had compression or a limiter on there, it wouldn't have been so damn loud and they wouldn't have been straight.
Yeah. And limiting is the same as compression. It's just you utilize a slight difference. You just use it, typically you use it to, like you said, limit or just kind of help blend things from track to track, or you maybe want to bring the overall sound up at the end of the record, right? Sometimes they use limiter, but you don't want it to go over 0. So
It's more like a hard limiter.
Yeah, they got hard limiter software. You can call it whatever you want. If it's a hard limiter though, it's typically because it has a hard ratio. Yeah, it means it's kind of smashing it just a little bit more than anything else, right? They got hard limiter, break limiter. Hard break limiter are basically the same thing. A break is hard.
When I was telling you those words, they're utilizing them.
Yeah, it's the same kind of thing. So, I'll just use this vocal here. So to me right here, he's not using a lot of compression on it. Just a little bit. And you can kind of tell because if you look here, it's barely dipping it. This is what I typically like to record with when I record. I don't try to do too much compression effects. Less is more. Minute differences, like make small steps. Because if you got the right equipment and you got the right setup and you hear it properly, you can almost dial in the mix when you're recording. And once you dial it in, then you just think to yourself, okay, it needs a little bit more brightness. So if it needs a little more brightness, what would you use? No, that's warm. So if you're recording
Brightness,
a
think
vocal,
about the word.
let's say brightness.
Highs.
What gives you brightness? What typically gives you brightness?
Gain.
It can. That's a theory. Brightness would be treble, right? That would be the high end of
Tweeters.
So if you're so for instance, if I'm compressing a vocal, right, and I use a tube compressor, it's gonna add some warmth, which might give it some dynamic energy. But then it might make it sound a little dark in the mix. but I need it to brighten up a little bit. So at that point, I tell myself, what tool do I need? I go for an EQ, because the EQ will help either cut the lows, the warmth out of it a little bit to bring more brightness, or I'll just go to the treble, the highs, fit 14 kilohertz, right, and just boost it a little bit, just to give it a little bit more sparkle or a little bit more shine through the mix, so it cuts through more. So you can kind of see here what he did. If you look at this EQ, he gave it a little bit of brightness here, because if I was to turn this off, it'll probably sound a little dull, right?
Dog can also like flat, like it's missing something.
Yeah.
The information when you wanna start. Could've spent them niggas that don't get on hard. Only keep it sharp.
Yeah.
The information when
That's
you
got
wanna
to
start.
Yeah, I got
Could've
to
spent
hop
them
in.
niggas that don't get on hard. We the ones that keep it bumping and jumping. We do something. We don't need you for nothing. Thank God.
So you just have to know what you're looking for as you go through your mix. But I just don't do a lot, because sometimes you can get it just right, just by a little bit. Just start small, don't overdo. And he has a very simple chain. In this chain, he's using EQ going into compression, right? I typically do the opposite.
Nah, yeah, listen to this. I want to hear this shit.
But it's all, like I said, it's subjective, guys.
Now, but tell them kind of the reasons why you would like to compress before you trim.
I use outboard gear before I go on the Pro Tools. I might use an outboard compressor, and I love the way it sounds. So I might not, or I might use an outboard EQ. So if I do that, I'll take all that into a compressor, and then I'll use an EQ to clean it up. So I won't EQ first, because I've already kind of EQ first before it actually went into Pro Tools. That makes sense? Like I did it before it actually went into the digital domain. So I did it live. Like I'll EQ and compress live, like, and then I'll record that, and then
He's a true mic checker.
Yeah.
Like, and to give you another reason why I EQ before I compress is because the people I work with, they don't have much time. They book 2 hours. They want to do 8 songs for some damn reason. They didn't download none on YouTube. And now I gotta have an EQ compression in some form of a chain real quick to get them in and out. Whereas he likes to work with people that have time. And even when he does, he knows what he can do in that time. And that's why he already dials it in on his hardware beforehand. He's already intuitive of understanding. On my compressor, I need to do this. Before that, I need to have a DX. Like, even some of his equipment is already outboarded. Like, he has, if he wanted to, he could EQ on the mixing board. It's already there. He don't got plastic on the mixing board.
Yeah, sometimes I'll just do it live before I actually use it. Because my theory on plugins is we were supposed to use plugins to help make what we do live better. But time and just the way we are nowadays, we're just using plugins to make everything better, right? Like we don't need all that stuff. We'll just use these plugins, which is fine. Everybody has their own way of, like I said, making their food, making their wings, making their mac and cheese. Right? You do it how you do it. That's all that matters. Just make it sound good. Just keep that in your mind.
I know.
Does it sound good? I can give you every technical answer, but the answer to it is, does it sound good? Use your ears. Your ears are your instrument. Your ears are your tool. Your ear is what will help you be successful in this industry. It isn't the gear you have. I know people who have literally this setup right here, and that's it. And they're making 6 figures off music. They're on tour. Don't let anyone tell you gotta have this, that, and the third. Don't get me wrong. The better the mic, the less you're gonna have to do in post-production. The better your front end is, and what I mean by front end is your chain before it hits Pro Tools. The better that is, yes, the better it'll make it for you in the end. The biggest thing though is hearing it properly. That's it. Having the right speakers, having a good room, that's almost more important nowadays than having the best mic and the best compressor and the best preamps. Because there's so many plugins now that can help you achieve a solid sound. Right? So yeah, he uses the EQ before the compressor. I typically use the compressor then the EQ. That's just my flavor on that. Sometimes I have to switch it up. It's no biggie. It's just whatever you think is best for you.
So nothing's completely wrong is what we're trying to get at.
Nothing.
It's your taste. That's why we told you to write that thing at the very beginning. So it's,
what you don't want to do is take the life out of something though. Like some people will overdo, and it's very easy to overdo. Like some, it's just like if you burn your food, so you can overdo it. Like you were taking too long to go back to take it out the oven. Damn it, I overdid the cookies, bro. Like so, that can happen. You might still eat it. You might say, I'll try again tomorrow, right? So, but there wasn't nothing wrong. It's just you overdid it. I tend to hear people do that more than anything. A lot of times they overdo it because one, they don't have the proper things they're hearing, or two, they watched some video and thought that was the answer to getting them to sound like Lil Uzi or some.
Their presets.
I will say this: presets will teach you, but you just don't want to get to a place where you think that's the answer.
It depend on it.
It's just to give you a starting point. That's all they're for. So if the preset gets you started, it gets you there. Sometimes the preset will just be like, that's it. But the preset is just to get you there. Once you get there, you dial it in from that. It just helps you get started. It helps you kind of know, okay, I got some reverb on here, I got some compression, this works. Still got to dial it in because every artist is different. You might project more, right? You might not project more. You might be more soft-spoken. And that preset ain't going to do nothing but give you noise that you don't need, right? So you got to readjust it to what you're doing, right? That preset might be good for vocals, not snares. It might be good for guitar, not drums, right? So it's just a good starting point, just knowing that. So I don't know, I'm just kind of going all over the place. You guys can kind of ask, throw me questions, anything you want as I go through.
So I'm about to use an SSL.
Okay.
Because I want them to understand what that is.
Yeah. So
it's a plugin. It's one of the best plugins on God's green earth.
Yeah. So SSL is known because of their tone. I'll just be honest. It's their tone. Their tone, and they had one of the best compressors that you could utilize in the early 90s, late 80s, because it glued records together really well. It just has a tone about it. What this SSL plugin is basically a channel strip. So on an SSL board, there might be 50 channels on a mixing board. This is a replica of one channel.
Like one of those channels, yeah.
Like just, so you got, if you got 50 faders on one mix board, one channel is a lot like this. And that channel will have EQ, compression on it, right? It'll have a noise gate, right? Noise gate, if you guys don't know, it basically stops noise. So like if you stop talking, or say you stop talking in the microphone, as soon as it registers that there's no noise going on, it cuts it off. It's really good to use with drums, because what happens, think about when you mic a drum, right? You got a microphone on the snare, you got a microphone on the tom, you got a microphone over here, right? You got all these different phases. If you put a gate on the snare, as soon as you hit it, quiet. They're not bleeding, so they don't clash. Correct. So that's what the noise gate helps for. With vocals, it helps because if you're, ad-libs, you typically helps a lot, because in ad-libs, you're not always talking. You're like, yeah, 4 seconds later, ha! So in between, you're cutting out that noise, right?
Which one is the proper way to say it? Is it ad-libs or ad-libs? I know what it is.
Ad-lib.
Adding a lyric.
Ad-libs. So the SSL channel, it also gives you the opportunity to use EQ first, or compression second, or compression first, EQ second. Your chain is very important. You want to know what you kind of want to go into with your chain. Your chain is so important because what you do first, what you do second, makes a big difference. And the littlest differences make the biggest differences in sound. Like, you don't always need to crank it. Boosting, I'll tell you this, almost 90% of the time I'm mixing and recording records, I'm subtracting. I'm not boosting.
He's taking away.
I'm taking away because
so we can add later if necessary.
Or one of the things about digital, these things are so amazing that they actually give you perfect sound. Like their goal is they were trying to make it to where the human didn't have to think as much. Their goal was, I want to give them sterile, clean sound, right? But like nothing in sound is that damn clean. It just really isn't. If it was, everything would be extremely noisy. So you'll find yourself actually taking away from stuff to make it sound clear. Because mixing and sound is an illusion. Like, a lot like how you put a pencil in some water, looks like it's broken, but it's really straight. You ever notice that? That's how sound is. A lot of times, you'll take away to make it sound clear. You only add when you really need to. Like I said, I'll add later. I set up for the mastering engineer because the mastering engineer will use really good gear. Or
Nah, y'all listen to what he just said.
Equalizations.
You adding so much before you're in your mastering phase that you can. It's like putting too much salt in something, and by the time you get the popcorn, it's like, I can't eat this. It's too much salt in it. And even when you try to take it out by shaking it, it's still, you've done too much to it.
Yeah.
You've colored it to the point where now it's not that colored.
Yeah.
Listen to what he's saying, because that's what a lot of rappers do. They'll do, what's my saying? What you put in is what you get out. So if I'm yelling in the mic and I got a bad level on my microphone and I give this boy a block of government cheese, he's gonna call me back and say, redo it. Hands down. He'll be like, what is this? Yeah. So go ahead, go back. So you have to do all that. This ain't Fox News.
So
that boy zoomed in up in that.
So back to the good thing about the SSL is just it has a tone to it. It allows you, it just kind of gives you everything in one place, right? And it's actually not my favorite. A lot of people use it. It's very popular. I've used it when I need, but it's not really my favorite. Go ahead.
You said that was the SSL as far as that's not your favorite? Or?
Yeah, nice favorite.
I love SSL mixing boards.
This is why I like him.
This plugin is not my favorite, but a lot of people use it. It's really good. And
Now show me.
Does SSL stand for sound system level?
nope, solid state logic.
Solid state
And,
logic.
and back what I told you in the beginning, solid state is a form of a transformer to power something. So you can use tube, or you can use a solid state, which is a lot like a FET. So a FET and solid state kind of are the same thing. They don't use tube or warmth to power their gain. They use more transistors. And so those transistors are typically, they have naturally more gain. What's going on? They have naturally more gain, and they tend to be a little bit brighter sounding, right? Like naturally.
So just to give you a visual, it'd be like gas versus battery.
Yeah.
It's like a car. So like gas car gonna give you a type of compared to a
Electric.
yeah.
This will give you a good example too. This will give you a really good example too. Y'all know who Pop Smoke is, right?
Yeah.
Pop Smoke has a very deep voice. It's very thick. So if it's that thick, what would I want to use typically in his situation?
Something that would come
Yes.
from low.
Yes. So if it's warm, it's just gonna make him be even more.
Yeah.
You might want to lighten up. So we might need something a little brighter, because naturally he's gonna make everything sound muddy because of how thick and low his voice is. Even when you hear his vocals, they still using some warmth in there, I can tell. But
Probably more digital than it is analog.
correct. Or they just did it in the preamp, not the microphone, right? They might have used a transistor microphone, right, on him versus a tube mic, because the tube mic might make it be more thick, like you don't want that. We want to breathe a little bit. That's how you'll know what to use. Now, somebody like yeah, you might want to use some tube on him. Yeah, like, you might want to use a little more tube on him. He has a little bit higher pitch voice or higher end voice, so you might want to warm it up, make him sound a little bit bigger, right?
And not even just that, he'll probably just add as well, because that's what's important about these big studios or studios in general. We're not even just looking at, we're also looking at microphones. So certain microphones have too much of a brightness on certain vocalists, whether it's a singer, whether it's an artist, whether it's an instrument. Sometimes we have to switch out our mics. That's why I tell you guys to not just depend on one microphone when you're in the studio. We love mics. He'll tell you, my favorite mic is a U87. He got on another one he likes better. And it's a tube mic possibly, is it that one?
Yeah.
So it's like, but these are things that we go back and forth with depending on the artist or the instrument.
And I love a U87. Like, obviously that's a very well-known microphone. You guys have probably heard of it, probably seen it. A lot of artists use it, and the reason why they use it is because it's very neutral. You can use it for almost any type of
Like
application.
pajamas.
Yeah, it's very neutral. I mean, it works on any kind of voice typically. You can use it on almost any kind of instrument, but it's really not my favorite. I actually got it for him.
He got it from me and the rest of the gang, but he understood.
That was nice.
Yeah.
Is it U87?
It's got a U87, yeah.
It's that one I told you, that $4 grand.
Yeah, Norman U87.
Whenever it was in the studio.
Hell no. He has that blueberry.
Yeah, the Blueberry. That's a bright mic. So Blueberries are cool. I typically would use them on drums for overheads because they're bright.
Part.
So I want to get the room, right? I don't want a bassy room. Since they're naturally bright, I want to be able to get the clarity, right, of the drums. So you're gonna pick two bright mics. That's why they typically have pencil mics. Pencil mics are typically bright. So they'll
I don't even know what you're talking about. I love it.
so mics you'll see they just shape like pencils. They're just basically like they're long to it, yeah. And they're skinny, so you just use those XY-Os overheads,
Those are condenser microphones.
and they're typically bright sounding. And when you have a drum, you don't want to like say you wouldn't want to have a. I don't know if you ever heard of an SM7B.
They're similar.
Okay, SM7B.
They know about shotguns.
Yep.
They're similar, but they're smaller. They do the exact same kind of situation, but they get more round than it does direct. The direct microphones we're talking about with the shotgun, they directively go to a person or a direct spot. Whereas those ones we're talking about, they go into access. They get like a roundabout area, not just one pinpoint place.
So that's that kind of mic, Blueberry mic. I would use that for that kind of application, or a guitar, because it's a string instrument. So sometimes you want to be able to, pick up those
Frets.
Got it. So bright mic might be better for that.
Did you tell them to get the 76, or did you just have it? Because I'm just using a virtual thing that they've seen.
I didn't tell them.
So all the stuff you
I
had
told-
other than the
I
two
told them to get the Linux.
and the personas, channel.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think I told him.
Okay.
Yeah, he got the rest. I walked in there one day. He had the 76.
Yeah. So explain to them why you preach the Linux, because they need to understand what that is. And it's not just an interface; it's a DA.
All right. There's all that interface is, guys, is what we call an ADDA converter, right? Do you guys know what that is? ADDA converter.
Explain this in interfacing when I show
So,
some videos.
what I mean by AD means analog to digital, and digital to analog. That's exactly what ADDA means. The computer is digital. When we speak, we're analog. So how do you take frequencies and turn them into numbers? You have to have some kind of conversion. That's what the interface is. The interface is just a conversion from analog to digital. And the digital to analog is where we hear, right? So there's different levels of that. They go from, correct, I.O.
That's why I keep trying to tell you how important that is.
Yeah, I.O. So, but just to throw y'all off a little bit, just to think about it. I.O. comes from
That's
ones and
thinking here.
zeros. I.O. is ones and zeros.
Like the Matrix. It's data.
Yeah, it's just data.
Just like minis, like I've been telling you.
Computers are ran on ones and zeros. That's why the power button always has an I/up. That's just what it is.
No, but I'm telling you, that's how important
And
this
it-
is.
and it
On your
moves-
PlayStation, on your Xbox.
And it moves in fours. That's why you notice there's 8-bit, 16-bit, 24-bit, right? Because they move in fours. And then they got the 32-bit. But it's all tied back to ones and zeros, I know. But that's a whole other theory, or class, whatever.
Okay, we was about to go down the line. Like, what? All right.
I'm telling you, don't play with this man.
It's a bit depth.
See, that's what they scared about. This dude wrote a whole book about it. He want to talk to you about that.
Back-
Sample rate. Yeah.
Back to the interfacing, and interfaces are great. He brought up the Linux. I brought up talking about the Linux because the Linux is a converter. It's literally just that. So an interface has a preamp built inside of it, right? It's got a headphone amp built inside of it. It's got conversion built inside of it. What else?
You said interface has a preamp,
Yep.
Headphone.
Headphone amp
headphone.
and conversion.
Now you know what conversion means, right, y'all? Like that 44.1, that 48. When we switch from those,
Oh, the quality?
no, yeah, when we switch it from that.
That's where the ADDA is the most. That's where the quality really comes from.
It's either 5 or 6 of those. Right?
Yeah, remember? But when you switch from them, this is like the automatic. Whereas there's certain things like the ones we have in our studio, we have to switch it manually.
Yeah. So what I'm getting to is an interface gives you all you need for recording in a box. In theory, guys, that's not good, right? In sound. Because in sound, it's best to have separates, right? So everything can focus. And if you think about it from even a corporation, we're going to go way back to the Ford Model T. There was
First
one
car.
person for each thing they did so that it'd be the most efficient way to build the car, right? You're not going to just have you sitting there building the windows. You're going to be tired, bro.
Yeah.
By the time you do 2 cars, you ready to go home. We need 20 cars done in a week, right? So you would just do the windows, pass down to the next person. He would just do the wheels, pass down to the next person. He'd just do the doorknobs, right? And overall, it goes back to when we started from the beginning of this conversation about collaborating. and how coming together, because you bring something different, it's going to get the best sound. Back to when you asked about ghostwriting, right? Because when you collaborate, that's how you can get the best overall sound. So back to internal pieces of
I'm playing with
recording.
PJ, y'all. Spin game. This
The
ain't
reason
3.
why I use a Linux is because my conversion is by itself. What goes in it is exactly what comes out of it. So when you go to mix and hear your music, you hear exactly what went in it
In there,
and what comes out of it. When you have a preamp in a box and a conversion in a box, you're actually creating more noise, which means it's coloring your signal.
Color.
Which means it's overworking itself, and now you're getting a little bit of...
You're not getting the clearest of your sound.
You're getting, you're getting kind
You're
of...
out here with no glasses trying to guess who she is.
Yep. So,
Get close enough, you
don't
might
get me
know.
wrong. These things are really good for what they do.
For that price range and what you're looking at.
And the fact that we can pull up anywhere and record, it's gonna be good. So yeah, in most big studios, you will see that they have converters separate, and they do that because a lot of times they have a mix board. They want the mix board to run directly in and out. You want to get exactly what that sound is producing, in and back out. You don't want to have to like change that or color that. Because the board really is what has a lot of the sound, and it's what allows you to have like multiple instruments at one time, being able to do bands, drums, keyboards all at once. So that's where a lot of the conversion comes into play. Why it's important to have really good conversion.
He's also stating that with that fact that it does that, it can make the mixing board now be considered involved in the interface. Because instead of it just being from them, like I told you, in the back of that box, it has a conversion that spits out 8 cables. Now 8 cables can go into that mixer. Them 8 cables can go to that snake that we saw in that room. Remember that black box? I don't know who was on there, but it was that black box that was connected to that. So if you wanted to connect 2 other mics or 3 other mics or some other things, those could all go straight into that with no issue, with no latency, with no other sounds in the background. Just straight data to data, data to audio. Get what I'm saying? That's what he's trying to explain.
Another good way to put it, you guys are probably, I don't know, you probably dealt with car audio before, right? Like when you hook up subwoofers, you don't hook it directly to your radio. You gotta get an amp, right? So just think of that. Like, and it sounds better.
We know that because subwoofers are in its own enclosure and it has its own power supply, correct, y'all? And speakers.
That's another thing. It separates the power supply. Like noise is the most important thing in recording. Like you want to have low noise. That the lower the noise, the better the recordings. And that's all tied to the equipment you use, the power supplies. It comes down to the rooms, right? That's what is more important. But that's why I was telling you when you should record. A lot of times, the biggest mistake I see engineers do, they record and don't turn the beat down. Yeah, because you're recording with noise. You gotta turn it down so you can understand what's actually going on. Because when shit is too loud, it's just noise. Now you're killing your ear. You get ear fatigue. When you get ear fatigue, you start doing things. You start overdoing things. And then next thing you wake up the next day, you're like, what was this? Sometimes it's golden though.
No, so I want to embrace this one because I've explained this to people, especially in this class, and it kind of it's like, what? Explain why it's not right to do a full mix that day. It might take a day or 2, and it's a little bit of that fatigue. Explain a little bit more on that.
I mean, we're all human, man. We go through life, right? You ever woke up and you was happy, you went to work, came home, and like, I don't feel like doing nothing.
Right. It's a mood thing.
So it's really what it is. It's an energy. It's a mood change. So when you can give yourself 2 hours to focus on it, and then sometimes it's best to just sleep and then come back to another day.
Genuinely,
You're gonna look at it differently. It's just kind of like when you got a bad relationship, right? You pissed off at your partner. You go to sleep, you wake up, and you think about it a little differently. Like, okay, I think I can handle this, right? So that's kind of like what it is. You gotta let yourself breathe.
Also, like to throw he was about to just say, if I would have not slept on that situation with my partner or whatever in particular, I might say or do something that will affect it the same way if I'm mixing. And I think, I just want to make this brighter. I want to make this brighter. I want to make this brighter. I want to make this louder. I go back and listen to it tomorrow and it sounds like 2 cats fighting in the alleyway. Yeah. That's your fault. I'm sorry. You overthought. And now, same thing. Your girlfriend left you and now she's with your brother. I'm just saying, you got to chill out. These situations. That's why I'm saying mixing takes time. And another thing too is I think we both can speak on this part. Stop letting the artist tell you when it's done or when they think it should be done. Until they pay you $2,000, nobody's discussing with me when it's done. I believe I can get it done within a week.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong.
Right there. We're talking about we're professional side of.
Yeah, don't get me wrong.
Labels.
Wait, don't get me wrong. With today's technology, you can mix a song fairly quick.
That's a bad.
But it's good, even if you can mix it fairly quick, it's still good to give yourself a day, listen to it. Like sometimes I'll do masters for artists. I can master a song in 30 minutes. Like it don't take a long time to master a song. If you go over an hour and master a song, you'd overthinking it. And you'll catch yourself as you get more.
Quick question about mastering. Like, what do you usually look out for when you master?
What is missing? So when I'm mastering a record, I'm listening for what is it missing that it needs to kind of sparkle. It's like when you wash your car, right? You wash your car, you get it clean, but when you wax it, it's what makes it shine, right? And so that's kind of what mastering really is. Sometimes mastering might just need a little bit more volume, but that doesn't mean you just go to the fader and turn it up. You have a certain tool you use to turn it up.
And that tool ain't cheap.
What do you like to do the most out of all of the mixing and the mastering? Would you say, for example, would you say you like doubling up better? Do you like changing the compression better?
Yeah, I love mastering. I've grown out of.
Words grown out. That means he did it before, so don't get sweet.
I wouldn't say it like that. I've done it a lot, and I think nowadays people are mixing their own records. YouTube has really changed the game, and artists know what they want. They don't necessarily know how to master yet, or they don't understand the concept about it, or they're overthinking it, thinking it's this big thing, and it's really not. It's literally like, okay, I think it can use a little bit more bass. Let me just poke it right there at 60 hertz, right? That's all it needs, so that it just hit. That's all it needs. Or it's a little too bright. Let me just tame the high end at 14 kilohertz, 20 kilohertz, because it's piercing my ear just a little too much, and that's what I'm looking for. And there's certain tools you use, but you only use EQ and compression in mastering. You don't really go too deep with effects or anything. It's literally you use those two things, but it's how you utilize them. And it's very important in your chain, because you might need to compress it first before you EQ it, or it might need to be EQ'd and then compressed.
Depending on the product. Yeah, that's real talk. And you have to think that through.
Yeah,
like you just said.
Yeah.
And if you don't mind,
go ahead.
Explain to them about what the importance between just putting a mic in the room and placing the mic in the room.
Oh, that's very important.
And he's on it right now, right? And you're on mic placement too, right?
Yeah.
And you too.
Mic placement is the difference between having to use too many of these plugins and not having to. So if you get the right mic and you place it in the right spot, you might not need to EQ much. And the reason why is because the microphone is your EQ, right? Think about it like this. If I take a speaker and I push it too close to the wall, what do you think's gonna happen?
You're gonna hear the music bouncing off the wall.
What else is it gonna do?
It's gonna make a lot of noise.
Create more bass tones. Why? Because it's more boxed to the wall. You pull it away from the wall, it's gonna give you more clarity, a little more treble. So same thing with a microphone. You might need, depending on the instrument and what you're hearing, you might need a little bit more lower tone, right? So you're gonna get a little closer to it. If you need it to be a little bit more brighter, cut through the mix a little more, you're gonna pull it out a little bit more, you're gonna find that spot, and you might not need to even EQ it much, because the mic placement was the most important part. Yeah.
All right, well, we're gonna kind of cut this short because I wanted to get him in and out. I want you to ask a few more questions, real questions that you guys have, because we will have him back. We'll also be going to the studio sometime in the future. Like I said, we'll let you see what a look like. Man, nah, man, tell them how y'all felt about y'all, how'd it go?
Is it a bad thing, to use too much soundproof? Yeah, sometimes. Okay. Hey, for vocals, I would say more so. It's not, but I don't like a room that's too dead, because you take away from the naturalness of the earth.
So rap and doing a commercial for Kroger's. Those are two different situations.
Yeah.
So like with Kroger's, you need to just hear the vocal. You don't need no background vocal. Whereas maybe a song that needs a little bit of room or reverb and some form of a tone, yeah, that room can enhance that vocal in the record. So it depends on what you're recording.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, but I tend to like more natural. Like I like higher ceilings typically when I'm recording.
Higher ceilings is the shit.
You want it to be dead, but yeah, I like a more natural room. Now, in my control room, you want the sound to be just right. Because you want to be able to hear the frequencies that's coming back and understand what you're listening to. Yeah.
So mixing and master, the mixing part of it is having your own chain.
Yeah, the mixing part is taking all the tracks and blending them to make them come together and sound like one. The mastering is making that shine. So it come through your speakers, your headphones, your car speakers. It translate well.
Sometimes you're adding color because he'll use certain, like, one thing he likes to do is go like, I'm just giving you, you can probably explain this afterwards, but like, he'll go to Knoxville and mix master on one record. I'm talking about literally take the record he has and throw it into a $100,000 to a $200,000 mixer to get a certain type of tone and sound. Some people can probably explain more because I don't know that much.
Yeah. I'll take a record and I'll run it through a certain piece of gear to get a tone, just to kind of like fatten it up, or like I said, warm it up, or I need to just kind of clear it out. Like, I'll give you an example. This is why I love SSL. I don't necessarily love the plug-in, but I love the board. Because as soon as you take a record and you literally put it through an SSL board, it literally feels like you took a washcloth and washed your face in the morning. You feel refreshed. As soon as you put it through that board. It don't matter, I don't care what you do, but as soon as you put it through that board, the sound will just get better. But that all goes to the electronics, the circuitry, right? And that's just what happens. So back to what he's saying, sometimes yes, I will go down to Nashville and I work in some of the bigger studios because I have tools. They have tools that I don't have access to here that I can utilize there to kind of help bring the sound out.
It depends on the record too.
Yeah.
Like if we're recording a little broken down the street, we can do that hard. But if we got a budget and we going somewhere with it, and this is going to 40 countries, we might have to take it somewhere else.
Yeah, and even then, like,
Depending.
rap is very electronic now. Yeah, I do a little bit outboard, but not much. I mean, you're almost better off not, because where the sound is today, people are just really, they're in the pocket. Yeah, they just recording like this and they running it.
You think Bro last time up here?
Who?
Pete Davidson?
Yeah, he would. Yeah, he would definitely be down because he's a teacher at heart.
We should make that shit.
Yeah.
This is another studio we go to. Like I told you, we don't just have one studio, we go to several. That's another thing I want to let y'all know. Do not be afraid to go to other studios.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to work with other engineers. Like, I mean, people have their people. I'm all for, like, sticking with your loyal, like, being loyal to the soil, sticking with the people you work with. But it's okay to work at other places. It's all about feeling comfortable and continue to learn. And as long as you can do those two things when you're making your music and it's coming out sounding good, and just keep doing that. But going to other places helps you, become a better artist because you start to learn different techniques, how people record, how people move, how people operate, and it kind of opens you up to different sound. Like I said, our buddy Pete, he does a lot of bands, instrumentation, and I mean, just me going there and working with him on different projects, like it really changed how I look at recording or how I, do my day-to-day functions when I am mixing and mastering.
He learned a lot about analog chains in there too, because he has a lot of analog here. He has lunch boxes and mixers. We'll explain more about that down the road. But these things enhance the vocals a little bit, or the sounds a little bit different than what we would do in a digital standpoint.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, all the digital were just renditions of what's already been out. The original black folk. That we you know what I'm saying? Because like I remember when I went there and he showed me this thing called a Shadow Hill, and it's a compressor. And it's an EQ, it's a limiter as well, but it's something that he used in the mastering stages that he has as a VST I've seen before. But then when I saw this little punk ass box, this thing was this big, bruh. It was this big. And it was making depth in the song, bringing tone out of it. It went from me going, I was like, this little box. And little box costs what?
I think that little box is like 6,000, but they make an original.
Do you hear this? Like y'all think?
But I think that the original of that Shadow Hill, that's like a revision version of it today.
Yeah.
But the original Shadow Hill, I think they're like $12,000.
Oh, that's one thing. That's people's whole budget for studios. That's mics, soundproof, the first 3 months, the interface, laptop.
But don't let all that get to you.
No, yeah.
I know people who drive Honda Accords with $1 million and people who drive Bentleys with $2.
So I
Don't
drive.
matter. It's just a matter about, does it sound good? Does it feel good? Music is feeling. Does it feel good? Does it sound good? Does it feel good? Go by what you feel. Follow your heart. Follow your mind. Follow what you feel. That's what's gonna get you where you want to go in sound.
Do you think ghostwriters should be paid?
Oh yeah,
No.
of course. That's why they're supposed to be on the split sheets.
Yeah, which
That's where they get their pay.
you heard the word split sheets, y'all. Contracts, y'all.
Oh yeah, they paperwork. That lady like.
Paperwork. But nah, man. Anybody got any more other questions before we break it up?
Are you more like PC or?
Don't ask that man that question.
I use PC because I'm outside of engineering. I'm naturally an IT specialist. So for me, you're gonna get the more bang for your buck, especially in today's time with technology. If you build a PC, I mean, I can build. I think a Mac is what, 10,000 now for the tower. I can build that same one for about $2,500. It'd be just as not powerful, if not more powerful. But if you're not a computer person and you don't want to deal with all that stuff, I'm gonna tell you a Mac is probably your better bet. They tend to just be a little less problem. Yeah. If I'm on the go and I'm recording on the mobile, I'm using my Mac. If I'm stationary, I'm in the studio, I'm using my PC.
The PC move, is it like less CPU problems?
If you build it, yeah, it's the cost.
It's not like it's like working on a car.
I hate it on the board and just
Yeah.
overload.
Yeah. What do you use?
Mac.
Okay. So you're using a MacBook
Yeah.
laptop? Is it older?
I think it's like a couple years old.
Okay.
All right, let's take these photographs.
You should be okay though.